The cargo freighter Hanbet drifted through the dark space between two star systems. It was an old ship, patched and repaired many times, but it flew steady and true. Inside the cockpit, two humans sat in comfortable silence. Tahoe leaned back in the pilot seat and watched the stars through the front window. He was 34 years old, with short black hair and a calm face that rarely showed emotion. His hands rested on the controls, and if anyone looked closely, they would see the old scars that covered his fingers and palms. Those scars told stories he never talked about. Beside him, Yuna checked the navigation screen. She was younger than Tahoe by 5 years, with sharp eyes and a quick tongue. She had been his co-pilot for 3 years now, and she knew him better than anyone else in the galaxy. "We should reach Orius Station in 6 hours," she said. "Easy delivery. Easy money." Tahoe nodded. "Good. You know, you could say more than one word sometimes." Yuna laughed and shook her head. This was how their conversations usually went. Tahoe was not a man who wasted words, and she had learned to accept that about him. The Hanbet carried medical supplies for the station. It was simple work, far from the dangerous jobs Tahoe used to do. He had been a combat medic once, in a war that most people in the galaxy had never heard of. He had seen things that still visited him in his dreams. Now he just wanted to fly his ship, deliver his cargo, and be left alone. The universe, however, had different plans. The first warning came from the sensors. A soft beep that made both pilots sit up straight. "What is that?" Yuna asked, her fingers already moving across her screen. Tahoe looked at his own display. His stomach turned cold. "Debris field." "Coming fast? From where?" Before he could answer, they saw through the window. A massive cloud of broken metal and rock was rushing toward them. Somewhere in the distance, the remains of a mining vessel tumbled through space. Torn apart by some explosion they had not witnessed. Evasive action. Tahoe grabbed the controls and pulled hard. The Hanbet groaned as it turned. The old ship was not built for quick movements, and the debris was too close, too fast. Yuna held onto her seat as the freighter shook. They avoided the largest pieces, but they could not avoid everything. A sharp crack filled the cockpit. The front window held, but something punched through the sidewall. Sparks flew. Alarm screamed. Yuna felt pain in her arm and looked down to see blood running from a small cut. Then she heard Tahoe make a sound she had never heard from him before. A grunt of pure pain. She turned and her heart stopped. A piece of metal, jagged and long, stuck out from Tahoe's stomach. It had come through the wall and buried itself deep in his body. Blood was already spreading across his shirt, dark and wet. Tahoe. She jumped from her seat and reached for him. His face was white, but his eyes were still clear. He looked down at the metal in his gut like it was a minor problem. "Don't pull it out," he said through his teeth. "It's stopping. The bleeding. We need help." "We need." Yuna's mind raced. They were in empty space. The nearest help was Orius Station, still hours away. "Distress signal," Tahoe said. His voice was getting weaker. "Send it now." Yuna ran back to her console. Her hands shook as she sent the emergency message. She gave their location, described the injury, begged for help. Then she ran back to Tahoe and pressed her hands around the wound, trying to slow the blood. "Stay with me," she said. "You don't get to die. You hear me? You don't get to die." Tahoe almost smiled. "Bossy," he whispered. The response came 20 minutes later. Orius Station had received their signal. A medical shuttle was on its way. They would arrive in 2 hours. 2 hours. Yuna looked at all the blood on the floor and wondered if Tahoe had that much time. She talked to him to keep him awake. She told him stupid jokes. She reminded him of the time he accidentally bought a cargo of live animals instead of frozen meat. She said anything to keep his eyes open. Tahoe listened. Sometimes he nodded. Mostly he focused on breathing, on staying alive through sheer stubborn will. The medical shuttle arrived 1 hour and 47 minutes later. Yuna had never been so happy to see an alien vessel in her life. The Moran medical team came aboard. They were tall beings with skin that looked almost see-through and only 4 fingers on each hand. Their leader was named Vel, a senior doctor with decades of experience. She took one look at Taiho, and her large eyes grew wider. "A human," she said. "We have never treated a human before." "He's dying," Yuna said. "Please." Vel nodded slowly. "We will try. But I must be honest with you. Human biology is difficult. Your species is not common in this sector. Our knowledge is limited. Just save him, please." They moved Taiho onto a stretcher. He had passed out by now, his body finally giving in to the blood loss. Yuna held his hand until they loaded him onto the shuttle. Then she followed. On Orius Station, Commander Toriem was waiting. He was Brachy, a species known for their military discipline and gray, stone-like skin. He watched the humans arrive with a frown on his face. "This is a risk," he said to Vel. "If the human dies, there will be questions. Political problems." Vel straightened her back. "I am a doctor. I do not let patients die because of politics," Toriem grunted. "Do what you must. But be careful." In the surgical bay, Vel and her team prepared for the operation. A young surgeon named Kess stood beside her, nervous and excited. He had studied humans in school, but he had never seen one in person. "They say humans are fragile," Kess said. "Is that true?" Vel looked at the unconscious man on the table, at the jagged metal still buried in his flesh, at the scars on his hands that spoke of old wounds and old pain. "I do not think this one is fragile," she said quietly. She ordered the sedation. The standard dose for a dangerous patient, strong enough to keep him under 4 hours. The medicine flowed into Taiho's blood. Outside the surgical bay, Yuna pressed her hand against the observation window. She watched them prepare to cut into her friend, her partner. The stubborn fool who had saved her life more times than she could count. "Don't you dare die on me," she whispered. "Don't you dare." And the surgery began. The surgery was not going well. Vel had performed more than 1,000 operations in her career. She had saved patients from diseases, accidents, and wounds that should have been fatal. She was one of the best surgeons on the station, perhaps in the entire sector. But she had never operated on a human before. And now she understood why her teachers had called them impossible creatures. Everything about human biology was different. Their organs were packed tight inside their bodies, leaving almost no room for error. Their blood vessels branched in strange patterns that made no sense. And the bleeding Vel had never seen so much blood from a single patient. "More suction," she ordered Kess. "I cannot see anything." The young surgeon obeyed, his 4-fingered hands moving quickly. But for every drop of blood they cleared away, more appeared. The human body seemed determined to empty itself. 90 minutes had passed since the surgery began. The metal shard was still inside Taiho's abdomen. They had tried twice to remove it, but each time they moved it, a new wave of bleeding started. The shard was close to a major blood vessel, the abdominal aorta, if Vel remembered her xenobiology studies correctly. One wrong move would kill him instantly. "His vital signs are dropping," another member of the team reported. "Heart rate unstable." Vel felt something she rarely felt during surgery: fear. This human was going to die on her table. There was nothing she could do about it. Then everything changed. It started with a small movement, just a twitch of the fingers. Vel noticed it, but assumed it was a muscle spasm common. During deep surgery, then the human's eyes opened. Kess screamed and dropped his instrument. It clattered on the floor with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Vel stumbled backward, nearly falling over her own feet. Her heart smear had 2 of them pounded hard against her chest. The human was awake. His eyes, brown and bloodshot, stared up at the bright surgical lights. His face twisted with pain, but he did not scream. He did not thrash. He simply lay there, breathing hard through clenched teeth. "That is not possible," Vel whispered. "We gave him enough sedation for a creature 3 times his size." The monitors went crazy. Numbers flashed red across every screen. The human's heart rate climbed higher and higher. His brain activity showed patterns that Vel had never seen before, patterns that looked like a storm raging inside his skull. Adrenaline. The word came to Vel from some old lecture, some forgotten class about Death World species. Humans could produce a chemical that pushed their bodies beyond normal limits. It could give them strength, speed, and apparently the ability to wake up during surgery. The human spoke. His voice was rough and broken, forced out between waves of pain. "You're cutting." In the wrong layer, Belle could not move. She could not think. This was not happening. Patients did not wake up during surgery. Patients did not speak with their organs exposed to the air. "Peritoneum," the human continued. His eyes moved down, trying to look at his own open abdomen. "You went too deep." The shard. "It's caught on the mesentery, not the aorta." Kess made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. "He's reading his own surgery," he said. "He's telling us what we did wrong." Belle found her voice. "You are awake," she said. It was a stupid thing to say, obvious and meaningless. Her brain could not produce anything better. The human Taiho, she remembered his name was Taiho, almost smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had seen worse than this. "I've done this before," he said. "On myself. Twice." Vel stared at him. "That is impossible. War doesn't care about impossible." His hands moved. They were still shaking, still weak from blood loss, but they moved with purpose. He reached toward the surgical field, toward his own exposed organs. "What are you doing?" Vel stepped forward, ready to stop him. "Saving my own life." Taiho's voice was getting stronger now, as if the pain was feeding him instead of breaking him. "You don't know human anatomy." "I do. Let me help." Kess looked at Vel with wild eyes. "We should sedate him again. We should know." Taiho's word cut through the room like a knife. "My body rejected your medicine once. Try again, and you might stop my heart. Then we all lose." Vel's training told her this was wrong. Patients did not guide their own surgeries. Patients did not sit up on operating tables with holes in their stomachs. Everything about this situation violated every rule she had ever learned, but her instincts told her something else. Her instincts told her that this human knew exactly what he was talking about. "What do you need?" she asked. Taiho looked at her. Despite the pain, despite the blood, there was something calm in his eyes. Something old and experienced. "Your hands," he said. "Your tools. I'll tell you what to do. I'll guide you through it, and if I make a mistake, then I'll correct you." I paused, and that terrible smile appeared again. "I've had a lot of practice staying alive when I shouldn't." "Oh." Vel turned to Kess. The young surgeon looked like he might faint. His skin, usually a soft blue-white, had turned almost gray. "Doctor," she said firmly, "compose yourself. We have a patient to save." Kess swallowed hard and nodded. He picked up his fallen instrument and returned to his position. Vel moved back to the table. She looked down at the human, at his open wound, at the blood that continued to seep despite their efforts. "Tell me what to do," she said. Taiho lifted his head just enough to see his own insides. The pain must have been unbelievable, but his face showed only concentration. "First," he said, "move the light." "I need to see the shard clearly." Outside the surgical bay, Eunice still stood at the observation window. She had watched the whole thing. She had seen Taiho wake up. She had seen him start talking to the surgeons. She was not surprised. This was the man who had walked 3 miles through a war zone with 2 bullets in his leg. This was the man who had pulled shrapnel from his own back using a mirror and a pair of pliers. This was the man who simply refused to die, no matter how hard death tried to take him. "You stubborn fool," she whispered, tears running down her face. "You absolute stubborn fool."
Ow.
Pressed her hand against the glass and watched as Taiho began to guide the surgeons through the impossible task of saving his life. The surgery continued. Pain was an old friend to Taiho. He had known it for most of his life. As a child, he had broken bones and kept playing. As a soldier, he had been shot, stabbed, and burned. As a medic, he had treated his own wounds more times than he could count. Pain was just a signal, just information. It told you something was wrong. It did not have to control you. But this pain was different. This pain was fire and ice at the same time. This pain screamed at him to stop, to close his eyes, to let the darkness take him. He ignored it. Clamp there, he said, pointing with a shaking finger. No, not there. 3 centimeters to the left. Yes. Now hold it tight. Val followed his instructions. Her hands were steady. She was a professional after all, but her eyes kept darting to his face. She was waiting for him to pass out. She was waiting for his body to finally give up. It would not. Taiho would not let it. Good, he said. Now I can see the shard properly. You were right before. It is close to a major vessel, but it hasn't cut through. We can remove it. Kess asked. His voice was high and nervous. Every time we move it, the bleeding gets worse, because you're pulling at the wrong angle. Taiho took a deep breath. The simple act of breathing sent waves of agony through his torn muscles. Human organs are not packed randomly. They have layers. The shard went in at an angle, which means it has to come out at the same angle. Otherwise, you tear more tissue on the way out. Vel nodded slowly. This made sense. It was basic surgical principle, but she had been applying it wrong because she did not understand human anatomy. Show me the angle, she said. Taiho lifted his hand and made a motion in the air. Like this. 30 degrees toward the spine, 15 degrees up, slow and steady. Do not jerk. Vel positioned her instrument. Her grip on the metal shard was firm but gentle. She looked at Taiho one more time. Ready? Do it. She pulled. The pain hit Taiho like a hammer. His vision went white. Every muscle in his body tried to clench at once. He heard himself make a sound, not a scream, but something close to it. A groan that came from somewhere deep inside, but he did not pass out. He held on to consciousness with both hands, like a drowning man holding onto a rope. The shard came out. Vel held it up, and blood dripped from its jagged edges. It was longer than she had expected, nearly 15 centimeters of twisted metal that had been buried inside this human's body. It's out, she said. There was wonder in her voice. The shard is out, bleeding, Taiho gasped. Check the bleeding. Kess was already there with the suction. It's bad, he reported. Multiple bleeders. I count at least 4. Cauterize the small ones, Taiho said. The 2 largest ones need sutures. Use the smallest thread you have. Human tissue heals fast, but it scars easily. Vel worked quickly now, her confidence growing with each instruction. The human knew exactly what he was talking about. Every correction he made, every adjustment he suggested, proved to be right. 20 minutes passed, 30. The bleeding slowed. The damage was still severe, but it was no longer getting worse. The intestinal tear, Taiho said. His voice was weaker now. The adrenaline that had been keeping him awake was starting to fade. You need to repair it. If you don't, infection will set in within hours. I see it, Vel said. But the tissue is very damaged. I am not sure my techniques will work on human flesh. Taiho was quiet for a moment. Then he made a decision. Give me the needle, he said. Vel froze. What? Give me the needle. I'll do it myself. Cannot be serious. You are the patient. I am a combat medic who has sutured his own wounds in worse conditions than this. Taiho's eyes met hers. There was no fear in them, no doubt. Only determination. You've done well, doctor. But this last part requires someone who knows human tissue by touch. That's me. Vel looked at Kess. The young surgeon had no advice to give. He simply stared at the human with an expression that mixed horror and amazement. Slowly, Vel handed Taiho the surgical needle. His hands were shaking badly now. Blood loss, pain, and exhaustion were all fighting against him. But his fingers still remembered their training. They had done this 100 times before. In worse places than a clean surgical bay, he began to stitch. It was the strangest sight Vel had ever witnessed. A man lying on an operating table with his own organs exposed, carefully sewing together his own intestines. His movements were slow but precise. Each stitch was placed exactly where it needed to be. Closer together, he muttered to himself. Don't want any gaps. Gaps mean leaks. Leaks mean death, as turned away. He could not watch anymore. His mind could not accept what his eyes were seeing. Vel could not look away. She watched every stitch, every movement, every small adjustment. She was learning. This human was teaching her more about surgery in these minutes than she had learned in years of study. 40-7 minutes after Tai-Ho had first woken up, he tied the last knot. His hands fell to his sides. The needle dropped from his fingers. The monitors showed his heart rate dropping, his blood pressure falling, his body finally running out of energy. Now he whispered, "You can close me up." He turned his head to look at Vel. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Maybe. This time. The sedation will work. His eyes closed. His body went limp. The monitors beeped steadily, showing that he was still alive, barely alive. But alive. Vel stood in silence for a long moment. Her hands, still holding surgical tools, trembled slightly. She had been a doctor for decades. She had seen many things. But she had never seen anything like this. "Finish the closure," she ordered her team. Her voice was steady, professional. Inside, she was anything but steady. "Standard procedure. He has done the hard work. We just need to complete it." They closed the wound. Layer by layer, they sewed Tai-Ho back together. When they were done, he looked almost normal. Just another patient recovering from surgery. But Vel knew better. This was not just another patient. Outside the surgical bay, Yuna collapsed against the window. The tension that had been holding her up for hours finally released, and she slid down to the floor. He was alive. The stubborn fool was alive. She laughed and cried at the same time, not caring who saw her. She laughed because Tai-Ho had done the impossible. She cried because he had almost died doing it in the surgical bay. Vel removed her gloves and looked at the unconscious human on her table. "What are you?" she whispered. The monitors beeped their answer. Heartbeat stable. Blood pressure rising. The human body, somehow, was already beginning to heal itself. Vel had operated on creatures from dozens of species. She had saved lives that others had given up on. But today, she had learned something new. Humans were not fragile. Humans were not weak. Humans were something else entirely. Something that did not know how to die. Tai-Ho woke up slowly. It's like rising from deep water. The first thing he noticed was the absence of pain. Well, not absence exactly. There was still a dull ache in his abdomen, a tightness where the stitches held his flesh together. But compared to what he remembered from the surgery, this was nothing. This was almost comfort. The second thing he noticed was Yuna, asleep in a chair beside his bed. Her head was tilted at an uncomfortable angle and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She looked like she had not slept properly in days. Knowing her, she probably had not. Tai-Ho tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. He made a small sound instead, barely more than a croak. It was enough. Yuna's eyes snapped open instantly. For a moment, she just stared at him, as if she could not believe what she was seeing. Then she was out of the chair and beside the bed. Grabbing his hand with both of hers, "You absolute idiot," she said. Her voice cracked. "You complete and total idiot." Tai-Ho managed a weak smile. "Good morning to you too. It's evening. You've been out for 2 days?" Tears were running down her face now, but she was smiling too. 2 days, you stubborn fool. Do you have any idea what you did? Do you have any idea how crazy that was? "I stayed alive," Tai-Ho said simply. Yuna laughed a broken, relieved sound. Then she hugged him, gently enough not to hurt his wound, but tightly enough that he could feel her shaking. "Never do that again," she whispered. "Never, ever do that again." "I'll try." She pulled back and wiped her eyes. "The doctors want to see you. The whole station wants to see you, actually. You're famous now. Famous." They recorded the surgery. Standard procedure, apparently. Medical archives or something. Yuna's expression shifted to something between amazement and disbelief. Everyone on the station has watched it. Everyone. Tai-Ho closed his eyes. He had not thought about recordings. He had not thought about anything except surviving. "Great," he muttered. "Just what I wanted." A knock came at the door. Vel entered, followed by Kess. The young surgeon looked different, now less nervous, more thoughtful. He stared at Tai-Ho, like he was looking at something legendary. "You are awake," Vel said. "How do you feel?" "Like someone put a metal rod through my stomach." "That is because someone did." Vel moved to check the monitors beside his bed. "Your recovery is remarkable. Your body is healing at a rate I have never seen before. At this pace, you could be walking within a week." "Sounds about right." Vel paused and looked at him directly. "Mr. Taiho, I must ask you something. During the surgery, you said you had done this before. You said you had operated on yourself twice. Was that true?" Taiho met her gaze. "Yes. How is that possible?" "War," he said simply. "There was a war on my planet. A bad one. I was a medic. Sometimes when you're alone and hurt and help isn't coming, you do what you have to do." Kes stepped forward. "But the pain alone should have made it impossible. The human nervous system registers pain more intensely than most species. How did you stay conscious? How did you keep your hands steady?" Taiho was quiet for a moment. He thought about the battlefields he had seen, the friends he had lost, the nights he had spent holding his own wounds closed and waiting for dawn. "On Earth," he said finally, "we have a saying. If you want to live, you keep moving. Pain is just a signal. It tells you something is wrong. But it doesn't have to stop you. Nothing has to stop you if you want to live badly enough." Elle and Kes exchanged looks. There was something in their eyes that Taiho could not quite read. Fear, respect, maybe both. "I will be submitting a report to the Galactic Medical Council," Vel said. "What happened here changes everything we thought we knew about human biology. Other doctors need to learn from this." Taiho shrugged, then winced at the movement. "Do what you need to do." Later that day, Commander Torium came to visit. The Brachy military leader stood at the foot of Taiho's bed, his gray face unreadable. "I have commanded soldiers from 47 different species," Torium said. "I have seen acts of bravery that would make poets weep. I have seen warriors face death without flinching." He paused. "I have never seen anyone do what you did." "I didn't have a choice," Taiho replied. Torium shook his head slowly. "That is what frightens me." "Frightens you?" "Yes." The commander's voice was heavy. "I always believed humans were a soft species. Your planet is pleasant compared to many. You have no natural weapons, no claws, no venom, no armor. You die easily from cold, from heat, from disease. On paper, you should be one of the weakest species in the galaxy. And now..." Torium looked at him with something approaching respect. "Now I wonder if we have been measuring strength the wrong way. You did not survive because your body was strong. You survived because your mind refused to accept death. That is a different kind of strength, a dangerous kind." He turned and walked to the door. Before leaving, he looked back one more time. "Rest well, human. And try not to scare my medical staff anymore." Days passed. Taiho recovered faster than anyone expected. He was walking within 5 days, against Vel's protests. He was doing light exercises within 7. His body, true to its nature, was rebuilding itself with stubborn efficiency. But while Taiho healed, his story spread. Vel submitted her report to the medical council. It was titled, "Case Study, Human Biological Response Under Extreme Trauma." The dry scientific title hid the extraordinary events it described. Within a week, it had been read by thousands of medical professionals across the sector. Within a month, it had become required reading at several xenobiology academies. The report's conclusion was simple but powerful. Human pain tolerance is not a defect or an anomaly. It is a survival mechanism developed over millions of years on a planet where death was always close. When faced with mortal danger, humans do not surrender. They do not accept. They fight, adapt, and endure. Recommend immediate revision of all human medical protocols. Previous classifications of humans as a fragile species were fundamentally incorrect. They are something else entirely. Taiho heard about the report from Yuna, who had been following the news feeds. "You're famous," she said again, sitting beside him in the station's small garden area. "The whole sector is talking about the human who operated on himself." "I didn't do it for fame." "I know. You did it because you're too stubborn to die." She smiled and leaned against his shoulder. That's what I like about you. Taiho looked up at the artificial sky above the garden. Somewhere out there, stars were waiting. His ship was waiting. The life he had built was waiting. When can we leave? He asked. Whenever the doctors clear you, then let's go home, Yuna nodded. She understood. Taiho was not a man who enjoyed attention. He was not a man who wanted to be a legend. He just wanted to fly his ship, deliver his cargo, and live his quiet life. But the galaxy had seen what he could do, and the galaxy would not forget. 6 months passed. The handbit flew through space once again, its hull repaired, its engines humming steadily. Taiho sat in the pilot's seat, watching the stars drift by. His hands sometimes moved to the scar on his stomach, a habit he had developed without realizing it. The scar was thick and long, a permanent reminder of what had happened on Orius Station. Vel had offered to reduce it with advanced treatments, but Taiho had refused. Scars told stories. This one told a story worth remembering. Beside him, Yuna checked their course. They were carrying engine parts to a mining colony. Simple work. Decent pay, no surprises. Just the way Taiho liked it. Yuna said casually. I got another offer yesterday. Another one? Some merchant fleet wants us to join them. They said they'd double our usual rate. She grinned. They specifically asked for the human who did the surgery. Apparently having you around makes people feel safer.
Are you Taiho side?
Tell them no. I already did. But this is the 5th offer this month. Your fame isn't going away. It will eventually. Yuna laughed. Keep telling yourself that. The truth was, the story had spread far beyond what Taiho had expected. In bars and trading posts across the sector, people talked about the human who woke up during surgery and finished it himself. The details changed with each telling. Some versions said he had no anesthesia at all. Others claimed he had removed his own organs and put them back in, but the core of the story remained the same. Humans were not what anyone had thought they were. In the academic world, Vel's report had started a revolution. Medical schools rewrote their textbooks. Researchers launched new studies into human biology, trying to understand how a species could be so fragile and so resilient at the same time. One researcher, a Moran biologist named Pell, published a famous paper with a memorable title, The Paradox of Humanity. In it, she argued that humans had evolved on a planet so dangerous that death was always just one mistake away. But instead of developing armor or venom or speed, humans had developed something else, a mind that refused to give up. Other species survive by avoiding danger, Pell wrote. Humans survive by walking through it. Their bodies break easily, but their will does not. This combination makes them perhaps the most adaptable species in known space. The paper was controversial. Some species rejected it, refusing to believe that the soft, slow, clawless humans were anything special. Others accepted it all too readily, viewing humans with new suspicion and fear. But more and more across the galaxy, quiet change was happening. Ships began seeking out human crew members. Not for their skills, though many humans were skilled enough, but for their presence. The unspoken belief was simple. If something went wrong, if disaster struck, the human would find a way to survive. And maybe, just maybe, they would take you with them. On a remote trading station in the outer systems, a young Brachy soldier sat in a crowded bar. He was fresh out of military training, eager to prove himself. Full of stories he had heard about alien species. At a table nearby, a human woman sat alone. She was older than the soldier, maybe 50 or 60 years. With gray hair and a scar that ran across her face from forehead to jaw, she drank slowly, watching the room with eyes that had seen too much. The soldier gathered his courage and walked over to her table. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you really human?" The woman looked up at him. Her expression was flat, unimpressed. "Last time I checked, I heard a story about humans. About one of your kind who operated on himself during surgery, who woke up with his body cut open and finished the job himself." The soldier's voice was eager, almost childlike. "Is that true? Did that really happen?" The woman, her name was Mingi, though the soldier did not know this, considered the question. She took a long drink from her glass before answering. "That story? Yes, it's true. I know the man it happened to. Tai-ho, good pilot, quiet, stubborn as a rock. The soldier's eyes went wide. You know him? You actually know the human from the surgery? Minji shrugged. We worked together once years ago. Different war, different time. He was always like that. Always too stubborn to die. But how? How is it possible? The pain alone should have listened, kid. Minji set down her glass and looked at the young soldier directly. That story about Tai-ho? It's impressive, sure. But it's not special. Not for humans. What do you mean? Minji smiled. It was not a kind smile or a cruel smile. It was the smile of someone remembering things that hurt. You should hear what my grandmother did with a broken leg and a plasma torch. The soldier stared at her. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Mingi laughed and returned to her drink. Go ask any human in this bar. We've all got stories like that. Tai-ho's just the one that got recorded. The soldier walked away slowly, his mind full of new thoughts. He had grown up believing humans were weak. Everyone said so. Humans had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. They came from a planet that was merely dangerous, not deadly like the great death worlds. But now he wondered if everyone had been wrong. Maybe. Strength wasn't about claws or armor. Maybe it wasn't about what you were born with. Maybe strength was about what you refused to give up. Far away. On the cargo freighter handbit, Tai-ho finished his shift and walked back to his small cabin. He lay down on his bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the familiar hum of the engines. His hand moved to the scar on his stomach. He traced its length with his fingers. Remembering the bright lights of the surgical bay, the faces of the alien doctors, the moment when he decided that dying was not an option, he did not think of himself as special. He had done what needed to be done. He had kept moving, kept fighting, kept living. That was all. But somewhere out there, in bars and academies and ships across the galaxy, his story was being told. It was changing how aliens saw humans. It was making them understand something important. Humans were small. Humans were fragile. Humans broke easily. But humans did not stay broken. Humans got back up. Humans refused to die. And that, more than any claw or fang or armor, was what made them dangerous. Tai-ho closed his eyes and smiled. He kept moving. He always had, and he always would. The stars turned slowly outside his window. The handbet flew on through the endless dark, carrying its human crew toward the next destination, the next job, the next quiet day in the life of two people who had survived the impossible. The galaxy had changed. But for Tai-ho and Yuna, life went on. That was the human way.